Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Olivia Maguire, and Olivia is Portfolio Manager at JP Morgan Asset Management. And today, we will chat about how to improve your mental well-being while working from home. So, hi Olivia, how are you today?
Hi, Patricia. Really well, thank you. And you?
Great, thanks, and a pleasure to have you. And a first question for you today, Olivia, is where are you located and what's been keeping you going over the last few months of lockdown?
Well, actually, right now I'm on holidays in a rental home in North Devon. But for the majority of the lockdown and the last year, I've been at home in Greenwich in London. So that's been really nice. We're quite close to the river, quite close to the park, which is really great to be so close to nature. And we've got a tiny little garden as well, which is quite sunny. And we've been growing some vegetables and seeds and fruit. So all of last year, we managed to be eating our own homegrown veg in the evening time. So that's been really nice. And
Brilliant.
it's nice to spend time at home as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So, Olivia, can you tell us about your role, please, in global liquidity and the career path that got you to where you are now?
Sure. So I am a money market portfolio manager. So that's for anyone familiar with finance, that's on the lower risk end of the scale. And I work for JP Morgan Asset Management in London. I manage about $45 billion worth of assets. So invest those on a daily basis. How did I end up there? Well, I did a commerce degree in UCD, and then I went on to do a master's in Carysfort in master's in business studies in the management of information systems. And from there, I started on the graduate program at JP Morgan in London. Started on technology because I'd done a master's related to technology. And after 5 years, randomly applied for a job internally that luckily said no experience necessary in trading and portfolio management, and got a job as a portfolio manager in the asset management side. So been there for just over 15 years now.
Great, and haven't looked back since, I'm sure. So moving on to your title, Olivia, and looking after our mental health while we're working at home, can you please tell us about that and how you have stayed motivated and positive during all this time?
It's been a really difficult year for everyone. But one thing I found over the years is that there's a strong correlation for me between psychological well-being and volunteering. And I do a lot of volunteering. My first time to volunteer was in our local pool in Dublin. When I was 15, I was teaching lifesaving. And since then, I've gone on to volunteer with a large number of organizations. Some highlights from that, I chaired our volunteer leadership group at JP Morgan Asset Management for about 10 years. And when we last were able to volunteer physically in 2019, we organized a volunteer week where we had 500 employees contributing about 2,000 volunteer hours. So that was great fun. We reverted to trying to do that virtually last year, and we had some success, but obviously not as many hours. And then personally, in 2019, I spent 3 weeks in Detroit on the ground working with the charity there, which was set up after the Detroit riots in 1958 to fight injustice and racism. And during that project, we lent our business skills for 3 weeks. There was 16 of us working with 4 different charities. And also last year in 2020, I worked on a virtual Service Corps project with a charity in Dublin called Northside Partnership in Darndale. And they have a program called Preparing for Life, which is a 0 to 5 year program for developmental program for children. And I think it's a great program, and it's quite closely related to UCD actually, because Dr. Orla Doyle from the Geary Institute studied the impacts of that program from 0 to 5 and then also beyond. So that was really great to see the link coming together between my hometown and alma mater and also work as well. So for me, volunteering is really important to just have that sense of well-being.
Oh, wow, that's a fantastic. And I am sure our audience will have lots of questions about that. And so please do remember to submit your questions via the chat function that you'll find at the bottom of your screens. So moving you on now, Olivia, to the audience questions, and there are lots coming in for you. So actually somebody asked, have you had any unforeseen opportunities out of lockdown?
Unforeseen opportunities. Yeah, a really good one is I'm a member of a choir. We have a choir at work. I help run it, actually. We've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years. In normal times, it's fantastic. We've had loads of performances at Southwark Cathedral, at St. John Smith Square. We sang Beethoven's Ninth. And also we tap danced our way through Anything Goes at the Hackney Empire. But surprisingly, we've been able to keep that going during lockdown. And it's not ideal because you need to sing on mute, but some of the benefits that have come from that are that we've been able to get alumni who've moved further afield, like to the north of England or Australia, have been able to join us. And it's been great to have that social interaction with people. But also singing is really physical, so it gives you really great benefits from physical, spiritual, mental, social interaction. And we've had some new members join from Hong Kong and Columbus, Ohio as well. So it's been a really great tool and medium to meet other people and stay connected as well. So that's been really nice.
Okay, really interesting. So here's just tons of questions coming into you, but I'll try to get through as many as possible. Do women need to take more ownership of their financial well-being, and how?
That's a really interesting question. In the UK, in the last few years, as you may know, all firms over 250 employees now need to publish their gender pay gap, which has brought out some interesting results. And I think it's not just the gender pay gap, but also the gender pension gap that we need to worry about. And I think that's something that women do need to bear in mind. Start saving as early as possible. The fact that there is a pay gap also contributes to a pension gap. But as well, I think it's been found that women take less risks with their finances, and actually the pandemic and the increase in stock prices and the rally in equities, which has been facilitated to some degree by the large amount of quantitative easing we've seen globally, but that's contributed to equities staying quite buoyant and performing. And that's actually just widening the gap because equities are on the riskier end of investments. And as I said, women do tend to be a little bit more risk averse in their investments. So the pension gap is widening, but saving early, saving as soon as possible, and also getting advice on that is really key to keeping your wealth in good shape for retirement.
Okay, great. So loads of questions, Olivia. Has work from home changed the investment banking landscape? Or do you see, I suppose the question is, do you see a return to offices?
Yeah, it's definitely changed. I mean, I think it's amazing how quickly firms adapted to the working from home environment. I've been over a year now working from home. I had one day in the office in December, which was really unthinkable. And actually, it was unthinkable to imagine that firms could manage their day-to-day from home offices. But firms are really quick to adapt, including our own. And I think there is a place for the office. We've started to go back to the office right now. It's not compulsory, it's still voluntary. I have noticed that it's people who maybe don't have the setup at home. Younger people tend to favor being in the office. They may not have proper workspace in smaller flats or outdoor space. They enjoy the social aspect of it. Also, there's the learning by osmosis. I think that's really important. A lot of your learning happens by hearing other people talking and discussing, and that's missing when you're at home and isolated. But I think that going forward, there will be a return to the office, but there'll also be a balance between the flexibility of being able to work at home and both and in the office. And I think, you know, from our perspective, it'll be possibly something like 3 days in and 2 days out. And I think that in the future, employees will actually look to that flexibility when they're choosing roles and choosing new jobs. So it's quite important to have that going forward.
Brilliant, because you've just answered about 2 more of my questions. Oh. That's fantastic. It was exactly what you were saying, more opportunities for people returning to the office and impact on well-being and this kind of hybrid work environment that we were talking about earlier. Oh, here's a very interesting one. So in your bio, there are multiple awards, Olivia. Can you please tell us about those? And congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite a successful year in many ways, despite being at home the whole time. I think that, you know, I won a Fund Manager of the Year and Wealth Manager of the Year, and I think that you had them listed. But it's great that diversity, equity, and inclusion are such key topics right now. I mean, that's probably the first thing I would say. Also, I think that some of the work I've done around mentoring is really key to this success in some of these. You know, mentoring is really important, both from a reverse mentoring point of view for the more senior person, but also for the more junior people. And mentoring is something that is quite important to me. I've worked on a few mentoring programs during the last year, one of which is the Schools Challenge, which we run with schools in disadvantaged areas, and trying to encourage students to be enthusiastic about STEM subjects, so science, technologies, engineering, maths, and to hopefully continue them into third level education. And this is a program that JP Morgan runs across Europe, including in Ireland, with aimed at DESH schools. And the team that I worked with last year, which is a school in White City in London, about 4 out of 6 of them have joined JP Morgan for the 1-week internship this summer. So that's fantastic that they're looking at that on the technology side of things. And then also this year, the team that we worked with came third with their invention of a toilet seat, which was made from recycled materials from the River Thames. So that's been great. And then also I've been mentoring over the summer a female entrepreneur who has a modern funeral business. So that's been incredibly interesting to hear her story during the pandemic. And it's called Poetic Endings. And it's to give a different experience to a funeral. And you can have a wicker coffin and be buried in the woods. And it's a really lovely company.
Wow. Okay. That's incredibly interesting. And so here's just a very quick question, Olivia. Are you a fan of working from home, considering that it could be less chance to be promoted?
I think that working from home has positives and disadvantages. It's leveling in the way that everyone's at home. I think when we go back to this hybrid model where some people are in the office and some people are at home, that managers will have to do a lot more work around ensuring that everybody's included. I think while everybody's at home, it's actually in a way been more leveling and given more opportunities to people. But there will be work to be done by firms to ensure that people aren't left out, and also to ensure that they're not missing mental health issues with people because of social isolation. I don't think that there's any less reason to be promoted now because of working from home, and actually I think it should hopefully be more positive for those who are on flexible working arrangements.
Okay, and we're completely running out of time, but a very quick question. Any words of good advice that you've captured that you can share with our audience that you've captured for you over the years?
One thing that springs to mind is that my boss said once, well, number one, I'd encourage everyone to take their holidays, because I think you need the rest and to use all the holidays allocated to you. But one thing my boss said that stayed in my mind is that, you won't, in 20 years, you won't remember those extra days that you worked in the office that you didn't take as holiday, but you will remember those holidays that you did take, or the time you spent with your family, or that school sports day that you went to. So I think it's really important to prioritize things like that. And I think that with this new flexible working arena that we have, that should be more possible.
And what a way to finish. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are completely out of time. So sincere apologies to all of you whose questions I didn't get to, but I just want to say this opportunity to say a huge thank you to Olivia for the most fascinating discussion today. Thank you so much, Olivia.
Thanks very much, Patricia, and thanks for everyone who's dialed in and clapping. And I think my mum was on as well. So
yeah, should just say Olivia is my sister, and thank you to everyone for joining in. One of my amazing sisters, and our mum is on this call. But thanks to everyone, including our mum, for joining in. And don't forget, you can sign up to this series at zoomforthought.ie, where you can check out our list of upcoming speakers for 2021. And thank you so much, everyone, and see you all next week on Zoom for Thought. Thank you.
Thanks.